Good morning, students. Welcome to Zoology webinars of Model School for Senior Inter. Students, in the previous session, Mrs. Prashanti ma'am explained us about the neuronal control and coordination chapter, isn't it? So, in this chapter, ma'am clearly explained us about the systemic sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system, which belongs to autonomic nervous system. And she also clearly explained in detail about the reflex action and also reflex arc, which are very important in exam point of view. Now, today let us learn and conclude the lesson with more interesting topics. Today we have conduction of nerve impulse, types of synapses, and also how the nerve impulse is generated. That also will come to know. And along with the conclusion of the chapter, Madam will also explain us about the sense organs such as eye and ear. Okay, now get ready with your books which you are maintaining for the webinars, especially for the zoology webinars of the model schools. Start writing the notes. Okay, I welcome Prashanti madam. Good morning, madam.
Good morning, madam.
Please continue the session, madam.
Thank you, madam. Good morning, dear students. Today, we shall continue with our chapter, Neural Control and Coordination. And under this, today, we shall learn about generation and conduction of nerve impulse, synaptic transmission, sense organs. In that, we shall learn about the structure of eye and how we are able to see, and also we will also learn about the ear and the mechanism of hearing. Nervous system derives its name from the nerves, which are cylindrical bundles of fibers. The basic unit of nervous system is a nerve cell or a neuron. Your brain and spinal cord make up your central nervous system. The nerves in the rest of your body make up your peripheral nervous system. Everything your body does is connected in some way to your nervous system, isn't it, children? For example, when you take, it tells your heart to beat, tells your lungs to breathe. It controls the way you move, the words you speak, how you think and learn. Everything is controlled by our nervous system. Neurons, also known as nerve cells. These are the structural and functional units of nervous system. These are the information messengers. They identify, receive, and transmit the information to other nerve cells, muscles, glands. Yes, synapse is a structure that permits a neuron to pass an electrical or chemical signal to another neuron or to the target effector. Sensory neurons. These conduct the impulses from the sense organs to the spinal cord or the central nervous system. Whereas the motor nerves, they conduct the impulse from the central nervous system or spinal cord to the effector organs. So when you see the afferent pathway, that is it is having the signals of the sense organs of might be the pain, tactile, taste, smell and hearing, that is to the sense, or that is to the spinal cord. Whereas the efferent pathway, this sends the information of the movements, glands, etc. from the spinal cord to the target muscles or glands. And we have also learned in our previous session, that is about the types of neural systems. Under that, we have also covered about the somatic and autonomic neural system. Isn't it, students? Somatic neural system. This is associated with the voluntary control of body movements. Whereas autonomic neural system, this is associated with the involuntary command to the internal organs. For examples, you may take cardiac muscles, smooth muscles, and glands. So these are all operating without our conscious control. And the structure of the typical neuron. This you all are been studying since 9th class, isn't it, students? What are the parts of the neuron? Yes, the neurons are made up of three major parts. They are cell body, dendrites, and axon. So, cell body, this is the cell body, children. It contains the nucleus of the cell. Then, what is the function of the nucleus? Yes, it keeps the cell alive. It has the cytoplasm and also it has granules. These granules are called as Nissl granules. The next part is dendrites. These are branched tree-like fibers. These are arising from the cell body. They collect the information from the other cells and sends it to the cell body. Next comes the third part, axon. Just see, children, this has been coming out from the axon. This is a long segmented fiber and this has been branched at the distal end. So, the parts of the typical neuron are cell body, dendrites, and axon. Let's see about the axon in little more detail. Axon carries the nerve impulse away from the cell body. A neuron has one axon and connects with the other neurons. Some axons are very long. For example, when you take that is from spinal cord down to our toe, it is very long. So each axon, it is having an ending which is a swollen like structure. So this axon terminal is swollen. It is forming a synaptic knob. It is having that is the neurotransmitters within it. So here action potential is converted in chemical messengers, which in turn which is interacting the receptor neuron, that is the synaptic transmission. Neurotransmitters, these are being released from the axon terminal when their vesicles fuse with the membrane of axon terminal. Next comes the synapse. So that is, synapse is the connection or the junction between the two neurons. They are able to transmit, that is, might be the chemical or electrical proximity. They have been connected. So here we see these are the axons, and at the end of the axon, there is a swelling called as synaptic knob. Here it is having the vesicles containing neurotransmitters, and one neuron is being connected to the other. That junction is called as synapse, children. Nerve cells, these are the active components of the nervous system. Then what is its property? They exhibit a special property called as electrical excitability. Then what is electrical excitability? It is the ability to respond to a stimulus and convert it to a nerve impulse. It responds to number of different types of stimuli. It might be external stimuli or internal stimuli. It is due to the membrane potential across the neuronal membrane. Then why membrane potential is established? It is due to the unequal distribution of the ions. Just see the picture, children. This is the nerve cell diagram. Here, this is the axon. This is the axon terminal and the cell body, and these are the dendrites. So here in arrows, it has been showing the movement of the ions. Yes. What are the important ions? Yes, the important ions in the nervous system, they are sodium and potassium. This sodium and potassium, these are positively charged. Yes, they will be sending, that is, they are transmitted moving down their concentration gradient by the ion channels. This is important for the formation of nerve impulse or action potential. So the ions might be sodium or potassium. They have been moving from cytoplasm towards the outside or from the outer cell towards the inner cytoplasm by ion channels. Then what are the types of ion channels? They are of different types, children. They are of like leakage channels, ligand gated channels, voltage gated channels, and mechanical gated channels. Let's see one after the other. Yes, this is a picture of leakage gated channels, children. The name itself says leaking. Yes, the cell membrane contains protein channels called leak channels that allow sodium or potassium to leak down their concentration gradient. Cell membranes are considerably more permeable to potassium than to sodium because they have many more potassium leak channels than sodium leak channels. Just see the picture, children. Here, the leakage channel is closed. So there is no entry or exit of the ions. Here, the leakage channels are open. So here, the ions from the inner cytoplasm are moving out towards the extracellular space. The next is the ligand gated channels. They are located on the postsynaptic membrane. The ion channel proteins which open to allow ions like sodium, potassium, calcium to pass through the membrane in response to the binding of chemical messengers, that is a ligand. So here just see, children, this are opening and closing to the chemical stimuli. So here through the open channel, the ions are moving inside. Here, this is the ligand gated channel. This has been closed. So there is no entry of ions. This is the voltage gated channel. So this is activated by the changes in the membrane potential. Open and close in response to the changes in the voltage, that is of the membrane potential involved in generating the action potential. So they are of two types. They are sodium voltage gated channels and potassium voltage gated channels. So here the voltage gated channel is closed. Just see the picture, children, and here it is been open. So as it is open, there is a chance of movement of the ions towards the outer side. This is the mechanical gated channels. Open and close in response to the mechanical vibrations or pressure like sound waves or pressure of touch. These are involved in the generation of action potential. So once again, I say, children, leakage channel, that is the ions are being moving by the opening or closing of the leakage gated channels. Whereas ligand gated means they are responding to the chemical messenger. Next, when you take voltage gated channels, they are responding to the changes in the voltage. Whereas the mechanical gated channels, they are responding to the mechanical vibrations. That is, when the pressure is applied on it, automatically the channel gets open. The electrical potential difference across the plasma membrane, that is when the cell is in a non-excited state, is called as resting membrane. So there is a difference in voltage caused by the differences in the concentration of the ions inside. Here when you see the cell, children, the middle part of the cell is cytoplasm and outside the cell is extracellular space. So there is a difference in voltage in the concentration of ions inside and outside the cell. Ions inside the cell, that is inside the cytoplasm, are negative. Just remember, children, the cytoplasm is having negative ions inside, whereas the ions in the outside of the cell, that is extracellular space, are positive. The difference in between the two charges, that is inside and outside of the resting membrane, are called as resting membrane potential. So when the neuron is not stimulated, it maintains resting potential. We can say that the cell is in a polarized state. So the cytoplasm is having more negative ions inside and the extracellular space is having positive ions towards the outer side. To enter or exit the neuron, ions should pass through the special protein called ion channels. So we have already learned, children, what are the types of ion channels, that is leakage, ligand gated, voltage gated, and mechanical gated. So they, when open, they allow the ions to pass or to exit out of the cell. When closed, they do not allow to enter or exit. So a neuron at rest, that is the resting membrane potential, is negatively charged. So inside of the cell, the typical value of the resting membrane potential is approximately minus 70 millivolts. This voltage is resting membrane potential. What is it, children? That is minus 70 millivolts. It is caused in the difference in the ions in and out of the cell. So the average value when we take children, it is between minus 40 to minus 90 millivolts. So when the cell membrane is at rest, that is potassium ions, they are accumulating inside the cell, and the sodium ions are accumulating outside the cell. So it is the potassium ions accumulate inside the cell, so more permeable to potassium ions, and outside the cell are sodium ions. So inside the cell is negative, outside the cell is positive. And here the activation gates of potassium are closed. So there is no entry nor the exit of the potassium ions towards the outer side. Whereas the activation gates of sodium are closed and inactivation gates of the sodium are open. And when you take, that is the resting potential, children, that is at the resting state, there is more negativity is being accumulated, or the negatively charged proteins are stuck inside the neuron. So this will be contributing to the more negatively charged in the cytoplasm. When you take the graded potential, as when you take the sodium gated channels, they are opening. The sodium ions, these are been entering the neuron. So the membrane becomes partially depolarized. This is called as graded potential. So what are the reasons for it, children? So that is when you see the potassium ions accumulate inside the cell, the negative charge within the cell is created by the cell membrane being more permeable to potassium ion movement than the sodium ion movement. So in the neurons, potassium ions are at higher concentration within the cell. And here, whereas the sodium ions, these are maintaining higher concentration outside the cell. So potassium is more inside, sodium is more outside. So as the potassium gates that are being closed, negative ions cannot go out. So the movement of sodium and potassium is called as sodium potassium pump concentration gradient. So from the resting state, children, the nerve cell gets excited or stimulated. So the nerve impulse is generated and conducted. So the rapid shift from negative to the positive of the membrane potential is called as depolarization. So already we learned, children, in the resting state, the cytoplasm is negatively charged. So here it will be rapidly changing from the negative to the positive in the cytoplasm. That is called as depolarization. And next, again restoring to the normal state. What was a normal state, children? That is the negative charge within the cytoplasm is called as repolarization. So when the nerve impulse is stimulated, that is called as the action potential. We observe the various changes. So that is the threshold stimulus opens the voltage gated sodium channels. So that is more sodium ions from the outside, they are being moving towards the cytoplasm. This initiates depolarization. Later, repolarization begins, and afterwards, hyperpolarization occurs. This has been caused by the efflux of potassium ions, that is the closing of the potassium ions. So the resting membrane potential is restored once again, that is by the sodium potassium ATPase pumps. Sodium potassium pump. This is a best example of active transport. So this pump transports, that is sodium ions out of the cell and potassium ions into the cell. ATP provides energy, that is for the proteins that pump the ions through the ion channels. So thus making the outside of the cell more negative, inside, that is it is becoming more negative charged, and outside of the cell that is more positive. And here when you see, that is it is been transporting for every 3 sodium ions out, that is 2 potassium ions are moving towards the inside of the cell. So it is seen that it has been contributing to more negative ions. So once again, I repeat children, so for every 3 sodium ions out of the cell, simultaneously, it has been pumping 2 potassium ions into the cell. So more negative ions it has been bringing into the cell. So it contributes to the negativity of the resting membrane potential. So that is minus 70 millivolts. So the action potential, this is of 3 phases children. When we see, that is the rising phase, that is the depolarization, that is the inside the cytoplasm that becomes more positive. And here when you take, that is a repolarization, falling phase, and the undershoot. And here children, depolarization, the sodium ions are moving inside. So it contributes from negative to the positive side inside the cytoplasm. Next here, when you see repolarization, means once again it becomes negative inside the cell. Okay, so these are the changes we are observing children. So once you see in this picture, resting state. So in the resting state, we have learned that in the cytoplasm, it is negatively charged. Next comes the threshold stimulus. So the threshold stimulus, what it has been doing, it has been contributing for the movement of the channels. And here the outside sodium ions are moving inside as they're having many ion channels. So it has been shifting from negative to positive within the cytoplasm. Next, again, it regains its normal state by repolarization. And here, more negative ions are being contributing, so it forms hyperpolarization. Depolarization. Depolarization, this is a change within a cell during which the cell undergoes a shift in the electrical charge distribution, resulting in less negative charge inside the cell. As the activation gates of sodium open, inactivation gates of sodium open, and activation gates of potassium are closed. So just notice it children, sodium ions are moving inside. And here potassium ions are not moving outside. So inward diffusion of sodium ions, but no outward diffusion of potassium. So it has been shifting, that is, it becomes more positively charged inside than that of the outside. So this reversal of electrical charge from negative to positive within the cytoplasm is called as depolarization. Here just see the picture children. Here when you see voltage gated channels of both sodium and potassium are open. But here there are many sodium channels which are being opened. There are many, whereas when you take the potassium voltage gated channels are very less. So as more sodium ions are moving inside and less potassium going out, it has been contributing to the positivity within the cytoplasm. So this is depolarization children. And the mechanical gated channels. What are mechanical gated children? That is, pressure is applied. When pressure is applied, the gates are opening. So the mechanical gated channels get activated by pressure. They get open and help for the entry of positive charge inside. So the action potential occurs when the depolarization reaches the threshold potential. So they are been shifting from minus 70 to minus 55. Just see the graph children. Here at rest it was minus 70 millivolts. So it has been contributing to the positivity. So the threshold stimulus, it is to the minus 55 millivolts. Next, the voltage gated sodium channels are opening. So in 10,000th of the seconds, these sodium gates get closed. So within a very short time, nearly 20,000 sodium ions are entering into the cell. So in this time, this shifts from minus 55 to plus 45. So this makes a change from 55 millivolts to plus 45 millivolts. in a very short span of time. This is called as spike potential. So more sodium ions are entering into the cytoplasm through the opening of the sodium gated channel. So that is the influx of sodium ions. So this is a positive feedback mechanism. When the resting membrane is re-established, axon membrane is said to be repolarized. Repolarization is a falling phase. So change in the membrane potential that returns it to negative value just after depolarization phase of the action potential. This corresponds with the relaxation of the myocardial muscles. So here the voltage gated, the sodium channels are completely closed, whereas the voltage gated potassium channels are open. So there is no further entry of the sodium ions. But over here, the potassium ions are been entering. So that is the efflux of the potassium ions are occurring. So the potassium outflow will return the membrane again, that is to the minus 70 millivolts. So once again, it is been regaining the state of the normal, that is minus 70 millivolts. This is high, that is known as the repolarization, and the cell will become hyperpolarized. That is the change in the cell membrane potential that is making the cell more negative is called as hyperpolarization. Hyper means more. So here where the voltage gated, the potassium channels, when you see, they are flowing into the cell. So more potassium channels are moving. So it contributes to more negative value. So it increases in the negative charge. That is, the neuron is hyperpolarized. So it makes even less than minus 70 millivolts level of resting membrane potential, that is called as undershoot. Refractory period. It is a period of time during which neurons cannot further generate another action potential. That is, it makes the axon more harder to produce another action potential. So they are of two types, children. They are absolute refractory period and relative the refractory period. Absolute refractory period. This is a time during which another stimulus, though given to the neuron, will not lead to the second action potential. Once again, I repeat, children, time during which another stimulus, though given, cannot initiate a second action potential is called as absolute refractory period. This coincides with the periods of depolarization and repolarization. Relative refractory period. Here, the stimuli given shall or will be much more stronger than the originally needed. So when the neuron was at rest, so a supra-threshold stimulus is able to start the second action potential. So this is called as relative refractory period, and it coincides with the period of hyperpolarization. Then what is the conducting speed of nerve impulse? Nerve cells transmit the messages known as nerve impulse at a speed of 100 meters per second. So the conducting speed depends on the diameter of the axon. Okay, so this is depending on the diameter of the axon, the nerve impulse speed is been decided. The greater the diameter of the axon, the more faster is the conduction. When you take in the myelinated axon, voltage gated sodium and potassium channels get more concentrated at the nodes of Ranvier. What are nodes of Ranvier? Just see the picture, children. Here, this is the structure of the neuron. Here, outside the cell body, this is the axon and covered by the myelin sheath. And at the middle, here, this is at this point, this is called as nodes of Ranvier. So here at this points of nodes of Ranvier, the sodium potassium voltage gated channels are more concentrated. So the nerve impulse jumps from one node of Ranvier to the next node of Ranvier. So the larger myelinated fibers conduct the nerve impulse more faster than the non-myelinated fibers. So this mechanism of conduction of nerve impulse, that is called as saltatory conduction. Saltatory itself says jumping. So jumping of nerve impulse from one Ranvier node to the next is called as saltatory conduction. So the conduction velocity. So this is very good in the working muscles of atria and ventricles. So when you see here, it has been jumping from one node of Ranvier to the next. So this is called as saltatory conduction. Here, just see the picture, children. So this is the resting state nerve impulse that contributes to the minus 70 millivolts. And next here, when you take the sodium, gates are opening. So over here, outer sodium ions are entering inside. So it has been contributing, that is to the more positivity. This is the depolarization. And the next, when you take C, that is it is regaining to the normal state. It is a repolarization, and this has been restored by the sodium pump, and later it causes hyperpolarization. Children, we go to the next topic now, that is synaptic transmission. Synaptic transmission. This is a process by which one neuron communicates with the another. It is a neuronal junction. It is the site of the transmission of the nerve impulse between the two nerve cells, or between a neuron and a gland, or a Musin cell, that is the effector. So how is the synapse formed? Nerve impulse is being transmitted from one neuron to the other neuron. So that is, children, two neurons should be connected. So connecting the two neurons is called as the synapse. So here the presynaptic neuron is connected with the postsynaptic neuron. So there is a space in between. Just see this, children, here the green color. So the presynaptic neuron is connected to the postsynaptic neuron, and the space in between, this has been separated by synaptic cleft. And the types of synapses, they are electrical synapse and chemical synapse. Let's see one after the other, children. The first one is electrical synapse. So here, electrical conducive links between the two neurons, presynaptic and postsynaptic. Here, both presynaptic and postsynaptic membranes are in close proximity. Electrical synapse allows the direct passage of ions and signaling the molecules from one cell to the other cell. So the narrow gap between presynaptic and postsynaptic, this is called as the gap junction. It allows the current ions to flow from one cell to the other. So here it is due to the direct physical connection. So the electrical synapse found in all the neurotransmitters, even the brain, it is, and it will be transmitting the signals more faster than that of the chemical synapse. So here, just see, children, these are the current ions. These have been moving from one cell to the other. So it has been transmitting, and this is the space, children, called as the gap junction. And when you see, when compared to the chemical synapse, electrical synapse, it will be transmitting the signals more rapidly. And where does this electrical synapse seen? So it is seen in invertebrates, lower vertebrates, also seen in our body, that is seen in between the cells in most organs like mammalian brain, heart, etc., and also in between the glial cells of the nervous system. Then when you see what are the benefits of electrical synapse, electrical synapse is to synchronize the electrical activity among the populations of the neurons. It helps to escape from the predator, and also it is bidirectional conduction, means it may occur in either directions. Next, we go to the second type of synapse, children, that is the chemical synapse. So here the special junction, it has been through which the cells of the neurotransmitters that is signal to one another or to non-neuronal cells. So here the presynaptic is connected to the postsynaptic, and the space in between or the two membranes, these are separated by synaptic cleft. This is chemical synapse. At a chemical synapse, an action potential triggers presynaptic membrane neurons. Here, just see the picture, children, the presynaptic neurons. So these are being triggered by the action potentials, and these are releasing the neurotransmitters. What are neurotransmitters? These are the chemical messengers. So here, these are releasing the neurotransmitters towards the postsynaptic neuron. So here we find the synaptic knob where it is being found at the end of the axon terminal. So here this will be transferring the neurotransmitters from presynaptic neuron towards the postsynaptic neuron through the synaptic knob, that is the swelling. At the synaptic knob, the action potential or the nerve impulse is converted into a chemical message which in turn interacts with the effector. So one neuron releases the neurotransmitter in the small space. That space is called as synaptic cleft. So the nerve impulse depolarizes the membrane. So the voltage gated, just see the picture, children, voltage gated calcium channels are getting opened. So the calcium ions are entering or moving from presynaptic towards the synaptic cleft, and these are being binding to the receptors on the postsynaptic membrane. So in this way, the neurotransmitters released, these will be transmitting the nerve impulse through the synaptic cleft, and these are slowly moving or binding to the receptors present on the postsynaptic membrane. And then what are the neurotransmitters seen in our body? So they are, children, acetylcholine. This is very, very important. This is a common neurotransmitter which is useful for muscle control and also for memory. And the neurotransmitters which are either excitatory or inhibitory, they are epinephrine, norepinephrine, dopamine, and serotonin. And then what is excitatory? That is, it is activating action potential. And inhibitory means it prevents the action potential. So the inhibitory neurotransmitters are glycine and GABA. The full form of GABA is gamma aminobutyric acid. So the common neurotransmitter is acetylcholine, and the neurotransmitters which are either excitatory or inhibitory are epinephrine, norepinephrine, dopamine, and serotonin. And inhibitory, that is, which prevent the action potential, they are glycine and GABA. So neurotransmitters, these are being released, and these have been developed by either excitatory or inhibitory postsynaptic potential. They are being moving through the synaptic cleft, and these are being binding to the receptors on the postsynaptic membrane, and slowly the action potential is being developed. And when you see the neurotransmitters, so that is acetylcholine, this was the first neurotransmitter, and this will be preventing the action potential. So that is, we can say acetylcholine is an inhibitory neurotransmitter. Then what are the uses of acetylcholine in our body? So here this is used in our autonomous nervous system. This is the chief neurotransmitter of parasympathetic nervous system, seen in the smooth muscles of the heart. What is its function then? It activates the muscles. It is also helpful in thinking and memory. Then what happens if there is a difference in the level of acetylcholine? So it leads to the diseases like Alzheimer's. So here this is the dementia, that is a loss of cholinergic neurons that produce the acetylcholine, is called as Alzheimer's disease. Dopamine. Here this plays an important role in how we feel pleasure. Feel good neurotransmitter is a dopamine. That is, when you see any situation that is, we are feeling very happy. This is due to the release of dopamine. It is an happy memory or a part of the brain reward mechanism. So this is a, we feel pleasure neurotransmitter, we can say, children. And but when you see the level of the dopamine, if there is a difference in the release, it leads to diseases. So like example, schizophrenia, it is a serious mental disorder. When there is an excess level of dopamine, neurodevelopmental abnormalities are being seen, and it leads to the brain dysfunction and improper balance of chemicals. And Parkinson's disease. So this disease is due to the decreased level of the dopamine. When there is an increased children, it leads to schizophrenia. And when there is a decreased level of the dopamine, it leads to the Parkinson's disease. So it affects the deep nerve cells present in the brain. Just see children, here the deep nerve cells in the brain, they are getting affected. So there is the deterioration of the brain function. Norepinephrine. So here when you see, this is both, it is a hormone and also the neurotransmitter. So it keeps our nervous system high alert always. So we can say that norepinephrine increases alertness. It also forms memory. It increases the heart rate and also increases the blood pressure. And when you take the next neurotransmitter, that is GABA, gamma aminobutyric acid, it works as the neurotransmitter on your brain. So this is it preventing the brain from being more overexcited. Okay, so it when the GABA is lacking, it leads to epilepsy. What is epilepsy, children? So that is abnormal electrical signal. Okay, so that disease is called as epilepsy. So the ligand gated channels, they get opened, and the chemical stimuli, it has been responding and generates the new potential. So this new potential on the postsynaptic membrane, it might be either excitatory or inhibitory. When it is excitatory postsynaptic potential, there is an increase in sodium ions concentration. Okay, and there will be depolarization. Depolarization means what, children? More sodium ions are entering inside, so more positivity inside the cytoplasm. Whereas inhibitory postsynaptic potential, so that is the potassium channels are opened, and when you take, it is hyperpolarization, and it is the exit of the potassium or entry of the chloride ions. This makes the membrane hyperpolarized. So here children, this is excitatory, sodium channels entering, and when you take, this is inhibitory, this is the potassium efflux, we can say. Next comes the summation of postsynaptic potential. When a presynaptic neuron fibers, that is repeatedly at the high rate, the summation of the postsynaptic potential occurs at the axon hillock. There are two types of summations. They are spatial summation, temporal summation. When you take spatial summation, it occurs when multiple presynaptic neurons together release enough neurotransmitters to exceed the threshold to postsynaptic neuron. When you take temporal summation, it occurs when the presynaptic neuron releases the neurotransmitters many times over a period of time. Just see this picture, children. Here, spatial. Spatial means what, children? Here, when multiple presynaptic neurons together release enough neurotransmitters to exceed the threshold of the postsynaptic neuron, it is called as spatial. So it is a simultaneous stimulation by several presynaptic neurons. But when you take temporal summation, so here it occurs when one presynaptic neuron releases neurotransmitters many times over a period of time. That is temporal summation. So till now, children, we have studied about the synaptic transmission, types, and how the nerve impulse is conducted. Let's move to the sense organs, a very important, interesting one, that is the eye. Eyes are the organs of visual system. Where are the eyes located? We have two eyes situated on right and left side of our face. So these are located in the bony cavities. They are called as orbits present in the skull. And eye consists of accessory structures and the eyeball. When you see the accessory structures of the eye, accessory structures, these are the protective and supporting structures of the eye. It include eyelids, eyelashes, eyebrows, lacrimal apparatus, and extrinsic eye muscles. So, this accessory structures, eyelids and eyelashes, when you take, they protect eyes from the foreign objects. When you take eyebrows, that is, they protect the eyes by preventing perspiration from running down the forehead and into the eyes, causing irritation. And when you take the lacrimal apparatus, they consist lacrimal gland, produce the tears, and they help in lubricating or keeping our eyes always fresh. And when you take extrinsic eye muscles, there are 6 muscles, children. Out of 6, there are 4 rectus muscles and 2 oblique muscles. So, eyelids, eyelashes, eyebrows, these are useful for the protection of the eye. Lacrimal apparatus, this is very interesting, children. This is the supralateral connection of the orbit and the nasolacrimal duct and the associated structure in the inferior, the medial corner of the orbit. Here we find lacrimal puncta. From here, the tears are being produced. Then the secretion of the tears, when you see the composition, it includes the salts, mucus, and also the enzyme, that is lysozyme. The lacrimal fluid, it cleans, nourishes, and lubricates the eyes. Extrinsic eye muscles. Extrinsic eye muscles, they are located within the orbit. There are 6 eye muscles, children: superior, inferior, lateral, medial rectus muscle, superior oblique muscle, and inferior oblique muscles. So these muscles, these are being attached to the human eye, and they help in the movement of the eye, and also when you see, and also in the eyelid elevation. So these are being innervating, that is the oculomotor third cranial nerve, and the 4th trochlear nerve, and 6th abducens nerve. That these are all, that is 3rd, 4th, and 6th cranial nerves. These are being innervated. So these are the muscles, children. 6 extrinsic eye muscles. These have been present around the eye. What do? They control the movement of the eye, and also the control of the eyelid elevation. Next comes the eyeball. Eyeballs, these are bilateral spherical organs, and these are responsible for vision. And when you take, there are 3 types here, children, that is having 3 layers: fibrous tunic layer, vascular tunic layer, and nervous tunic layer, which is called as retina. And it is also having, eye is also having lens. Lens is attached ciliary muscle, that is by suspensory ligament. Okay, so the lens will be helping to held in position. When you take the first layer, children, in the eye, that is the fibrous tunic. Fibrous tunic, here this is the outer coat, and here it is having sclera and cornea. And this cornea, this is being covered by a thin outer layer that is called as conjunctiva, and the major part sclera. This is the white of the eye, and this will be covering the entire eyeball. Okay, then what does this do, children? The fibrous tunica, which is comprised of cornea and sclera, they maintain the fluid homeostasis by draining aqueous humor. So here the sclera, it will be giving the shape to the eyeball. It makes it more rigid and protects the inner parts. At the junction of the sclera and the cornea, there is a channel, children, here that is known as scleral venous sinus or the canal of Schelem. So the two parts, when you see in the fibrous tunic, this is the cornea, transparent, and the outside rays are entering through the cornea, and this is nourished by tears and aqueous humor, and the major part, the white part of the eye, is the sclera. Okay, and from the sclera, here it is posteriorly pierced by the optic nerve. And when you see the next part, the second part is the vascular tunic. The vascular tunic, also called as uvea, this is the middle layer of the eyeball, and it is having three portions under it, that is choroid layer, ciliary body, and iris. So just see, children, the first part here, this is the fibrous tunic. It includes the cornea and the sclera. The next part, children, here this is the vascular tunic. It includes iris, ciliary body, and choroid. And when you take the third layer, this is the nervous tunic, children, and this is also called as the retina. So now we are learning about the second layer, children, that is the vascular tunic, also called as the choroid layer. So this is highly vascularized, and this is bluish in color, and highly pigmented also when you see. And here when you see the muscles associated with the ciliary body, here these are the ciliary muscles or the ciliary band of the smooth muscles. Here when you see, children, so here it is having ciliary body, ciliary muscles. This is includes comprises of the ciliary body, and it is also having suspensory ligaments. They are attaching the lens to the ciliary processes. So the muscles attached with the ciliary body is a ciliary band of smooth muscles. They help and alter the shape of the lens. Eyes adjust itself to see the objects nearby and far off the objects. So this is called as eye accommodation power. So that is, eye adjusts itself, children, to see whether it might be far off objects or near objects. That is called as eye accommodation power. And under it we see the part, children, iris. Here this is the iris, a flat ring shaped membrane behind the cornea of the eye. It is when you see, it is a colored portion of the eyeball and attached to the outer membrane of the ciliary processes. And when you see the aperture in the center of the iris is the pupil, and iris with the pupil, it regulates the amount of the light that gets into the eye. The diameter of the pupil is regulated by the muscles of the iris. So in this way, the outside, from the outside, the light is been entering through the cornea. Slowly, it has been passing through the lens towards the inner parts. So here, this is the picture of the iris, children, having the muscles, that is circular and the radial muscles, and the central aperture or the center of the iris is called as a pupil. And we go to the third layer, children. The first layer is fibrous tunic. Second layer is vascular tunic. And now we are learning the third layer, that is the neural tunic or the retina. This is the third layer, innermost layer. It consists of, when you see, it is 0.5 mm thickness, having two parts, that is a pigmented epithelium, which is a non-visual portion, and a neural portion, which is a visual portion. Pigmented epithelium, it is a sheet of melanin that is having the epithelial cells firmly attached to the underlying choroid and underlying the retinal visual cells. And when you see the neural part, neural part, it is having the 3 layers of the neurons, children. When you see, that is the photoreceptor layer. This is the photoreceptor layer, which is close to the choroid coat. And this is the bipolar cell layer. The third one is the ganglion cell layer. So there are 3 layers present in the neural portion of the retina. That is photoreceptor layer, bipolar layer, and the ganglionic cell layer. Photoreceptor layer. These are the specialized cells in the eye's retina. These are responsible for converting the light into signals that are sent to the brain. So there are 2 types, children. The photoreceptor cells, they are rods and cones. Just see the picture, children. This is the picture of the rods and this is the picture of the cones. Then what do rods contain and what do rods do? We shall see, children. Rods contain a purplish red protein, that is a rhodopsin, or a visual purple protein. It is being formed by the opsin protein and retinol. Okay, and these rods, these are highly sensitive to light. Means rods are helpful to see the bright light, we can say. And nearly 92 million rod cells, these are been located in the human retina. And here when you see, these are cylindrical shaped and these are functionally best. That is when you see, that is rods, they are low intensity light. When you see, that is even in the night time, that is we can see our best due to the help of the rods. That is, we can say it is twilight scotopic vision. That is, we can, the vision of the eye under low light conditions like dusk, etc. And the next, the photoreceptor cell is the cones. They have the visual pigment iodopsin, and this is important in the daylight, that is photopic vision, and the color vision. Means we are able to see the bright light with the help of the cones, and the dim light, even in the dim light, we can see the best with the help of the rods. So the color vision is due to the cones, and we have 3 types of the cones. Here they have different sensitivity, that is they provide optimal response to the 3 colors, that is red, green, and the blue. So the brain integrates the signals they send from the optic nerve, allows to see millions of the colors. So for example, when you take yellow color, how it is being formed? It is being formed by the combination of the green and the red. When all the cones are stimulated equally, brain perceives the color as the white. So this is called as trichromacy theory. So there are 3 types of cones which are able to provide optimal response to red, green, and blue color. Once again, I repeat, children, rods are able to perceive the dim light and the cones are able to perceive the bright light. When you see the center part, the posterior portion of the retina, this is called as macula lutea. This is the retina part. In that, when you see the posterior part at the center, it is having the macula lutea, which is also called as yellow spot. And we find a small depression at the center of the yellow spot. Okay, that is called as fovea centralis. So fovea centralis, this is a small central pit and it contains no rods, but it is having only cones. So what is the use of cones, children? They are able to see bright light. Okay, so the functions of cones, these are responsible for sharp central vision while walking, reading, driving, etc. And the nerve cells that are coming out from the eyeball, these are the optic nerves. And at the site of the retina, where the optic nerve is coming out, there is a small dot-like structure that is called as optic disc or blind spot. Okay, blind spot, this is a place of the optic nerve and the blood vessels, they are leaving the eyeball. Here, it is devoid of photoreceptor cells. What are the photoreceptor cells, children? They are rods and cones. So At the point of the blind spot, it has no rods nor cones. So no image is formed at this spot. When you see the lens are transparent, non-vascular and biconvex structures. They are present within the cavity of the eyeball. They are held in position, that is due to the encircling suspensory ligaments. Just see the picture, children. Here, this is the lens and this is held in its position by the suspensory ligaments. And there are two chambers, children. The chambers in the eye, these are fluid filled areas in the eye, and the eye includes two types of chambers, and these are dividing the lens into, that is, anterior chamber and posterior chamber. Just see, children, the red color, this is the anterior chamber, and here the blue color, this is the posterior chamber. Anterior chamber, this is behind the cornea, and it consists of the cleary fluid called as aqueous humor. And here when you take, this is a blue color, this is the posterior cavity, larger space behind the lens, it is called as vitreous chamber, and it is having vitreous humor, and it helps to hold its spherical shape. And when you see intraocular pressure, what is intraocular pressure? Fluid pressure inside the eye, it is called as intraocular pressure. So anterior chamber consists of aqueous humor, and here the posterior one, that is the vitreous chamber, consists of the vitreous humor. Aqueous chamber helps in nourishing the lens, and the vitreous chamber helps to protect the shape of the eye. Intraocular pressure, that is the fluid pressure present inside the eye, is called as intraocular pressure. Tonometry, this is the method eye care professionals use to determine the pressure of the fluid present in the eye. Then how do we see? Then what is the mechanism of the vision? So the light rays, that is from the outside, they are entering the eye. So it reaches the first part, that is the cornea. From the cornea, it has been traveling to the pupil, and here the central part, that is of the iris, and it has been passing on to the lens. And from the lens, it has been moving through the vitreous humor towards the retina. Okay, so on the retina here, it will be forming the inverted image. And what is the nerve coming out, children? The nerve coming out of the eye, that is called as the optic nerve. What does it do? This optic nerve is carrying the signals to the visual cortex of the brain. So in the brain, the signals, whatever we see, these are being turned into the images. Then what are the diseases our eye get? So some of the diseases, children, like xerophthalmia. Xerophthalmia, this is a progressive eye disease or due to the vitamin A deficiency. What is the food of vitamin A, children? That is milk, greeny leafy vegetables, etc. So when you take the food which is lacking vitamin A, we may suffer from xerophthalmia. Here, that is the dryness of the eyeball. So this will be further leading to the blindness. Conjunctivitis. Conjunctivitis is also called as pink eye. That is irritation or the inflammation of conjunctiva. That is, this is the white covering of the eyeball will be turning to red or pink in color. So that is conjunctiva. It is inflammation of the conjunctiva layer. Then why does it occur? Conjunctiva, it is taking place by the poor hygiene or the physical contact with other people when we are not washing our eyes or hands, when we are putting our eyes into the eye, or through the when the insects entry. So these all lead to the conjunctivitis. Night blindness, the name itself says unable to see clearly during the night time or when the night is dim. Cataract, so this is the common aged people. Here this cataract condition occurs, the lens become cloudy. Okay, by using the certain lens, it may be corrected or due to surgery. And astigmatism means here this the cornea, it due to the cornea, stretched image is being formed, and sometimes horizontal objects they become blurred. And the another defect we see is the far-sightedness or long-sightedness, which is also known as hypermetropia. The name itself says the distant objects are clearly seen, but the nearby objects which are present very close to us, they form blurred image. Next one is short-sightedness, which is called as myopia. So under long-sightedness, that is the image is being formed behind instead of on the retina, whereas in the short-sightedness, the light is being focusing in front of the retina. It occurs when the eye is becoming too long. Okay, so this can be corrected by using a concave lens. So the people of short-sightedness can see the near objects but not the distant objects. So we should always have some values in our life, children. That is, we have to donate organs and save the other person's life. Donating one's eye after death, which is called as eye donation. So let someone see the beauty through your eyes. So when you donate your eyes, that is, we are providing the gift of the sight, that is the vision, to two blind people, not one children. We are giving the gift of sight to two blind people. So we have to donate eyes after our death. Let's see to the next interesting sense organ, ear. This is a statoacoustic receptor, which is helpful for hearing and equilibrium. There are three parts in the ear, children: external ear, middle ear, and the internal ear. External ear. The name itself says external, means which is visible. This is the outer ear, children. It consists of three parts: pinna, that is called as auricle; external auditory meters, that is also called as external auditory canal; and the inner, that is the eardrum. So here just see the picture, children. The function of the ear, here the external ear, it is collecting the sound, and this is the external ear auricle, and it is made up of cartilage, and it is having the next part. This is the external auditory meters, and here the inner part, this is the tympanic membrane. So the first part of the external ear, that is the auricle or the pinna. This is made up of the rigid elastic cartilage covered by the skin. This is the first part of the external ear, children, and this collects the sound waves from the outside. It has been traveling to the next part of the external ear. This is the external auditory canal. From there, here the sound has been amplified and moving to the further internal parts. The next part, here when you see this, children, this is a passageway that leads from the outside of the head towards the tympanic membrane, and this canal is nearly 1 inch in length. And here we find tiny hairs also, children, and in the ear we find at the external auditory canal we find some modified apocrine glands. They produce the cerumen, the ear wax. So cerumen, that is the ear wax, they help to protect the ear canal against the physical damage, and also it will be discouraging the insects, dust, or foreign particles from entering the ear. So the middle ear, this is known as here, it is present between the eardrum and also the oval window. So this will be transmitting the sound from the outer ear to the inner ear. So here we see, children, the two parts. This is the round window. This is fenestra rotunda. And the next part, this is the oval window. This is fenestra ovalis. And when you see the three bones are ossicles present in the middle ear. They are malleus, incus, and stapes. So these three bones, these are connected in a chain-like manner. So when you see one after the other, the first one, children, malleus. This is the shape resembling of that of the hammer. This is attached to the eardrum. What is the eardrum, children? It is the tympanic membrane. Okay, so this is attached to the eardrum, and here this is the largest of the middle ear bony ossicles, and here this articulates with the next part, that is the incus. Incus, that is anvil, this is the middle of the chain of the bones, and next we go to the third part, that is the stapes. This is the smallest bone of the human body itself, and it will be joining the incus, and these three bones, okay, this transmit the sound waves from the middle ear to the innermost ear. And here we notice Eustachian tube. This is the Eustachian tube, children, also called as auditory tube. This is a small passageway that connects your throat to the middle ear. So here just see, children, this is the Eustachian tube. This is a tube of hearing, also called as auditory tube. Okay, so this is connecting our throat to the middle ear. So when we sneeze, swallow, or yawn, whatever it is, the Eustachian tube will be opening. So this keeps the air pressure building up, that is inside the ear, and it will be protecting from the infections. Okay, so here it is helpful in equalizing the pressure, that is between the middle ear and also the internal ear. It is also helpful in clearing the secretions and protecting the ear from the pathogens causing the infections. Then what happens if the Eustachian tube is being damaged? So over here, when you see, there will be a severe pain in the ear, and also there is a ringing sound in the ear. Some buzzing sound appears in the ear always. So that is, we can say that the sound loss, that is the hearing is impaired when the Eustachian tube gets damaged. We move to the next third part, children, that is the inner ear. So this is the labyrinth of the ear. It is having two parts, that is bony labyrinth and membranous labyrinth. So bony labyrinth. So the name itself says, children, bone. So it consists of series of bony cavities in the temporal bone. It is composed of three sections, that is the vestibule, semicircular canals, and cochlea. Cochlea, this is the portion of the innermost ear, and here when you see, it looks like the snail shell, and it receives the sound in the form of vibrations. It converts into the nerve impulse and takes up into the brain. And there are three tubes in one, children, which comprises of cochlea. Here they are scala vestibuli, scala media, and the scala tympani. These are the three tubes, we can say, seen in the cochlea. And the scala vestibuli and the scala media, these are separated by a membrane that is called as resinous membrane. This is very important, children. Scala vestibuli and scala media, these are separated by resinous membrane. And scala media and the scala tympani, these have been separated by the basilar membrane. And when you see the scala media and the scala tympani, these are filled with the perilymph, and the scala media, in addition to perilymph, it is also filled with endolymph. And at the base of cochlea, here the scala vestibuli, when you see, it ends at the oval, and the scala tympani ends at the round. So it leads to the middle ear. So here see, children, here when there is any vibration, high frequency tone, so it affects the membranes and it leads to the hearing impairment. Organ of Corti. So this is the organ of the innermost ear present on the basilar membrane. It is located within the cochlea and it contributes to hearing, that is the audition. It has hair cells, that is stereocilia, and they are present in three rows in the outer hair cells and one row in the innermost layers. So these have been formed by the innervation of the nerve fibers of the cochlear branch of the 8th cranial nerve. And here see children, there are 3 semicircular canals. These are tiny fluid filled tubes. These are right angled to each other. So that is the anterior, lateral and posterior. So there are 3 semicircular canals present, right angle to each other. And when you see the base of the each one, it is swollen, called as ampulla, and having a projecting ridge called as the crista. Okay, so what is the function of the semicircular canals? So it is responsible for angular acceleration and also the rotation of the body. If the semicircular canals, that is these 3, that is anterior, lateral and posterior, so if they get damaged, the person will lose his the sense of balancing and also the loss of hearing. The vestibules, when you take, these have been present between cochlea and the semicircular canals, and the membranous labyrinth also has the vestibule. So these has the 2 sacs, children. So these are the 2 sacs, that is the saccule and utricle. So these both saccule and utricle, these are called as otolith organs. Okay, and these contain a projecting ridge. This is called as the macula. And when you see the functions, that is responsible for linear acceleration, and when you take separately, that is saccule. So this saccule is responsible for vertical movement. That is when you are going in a lift, that is moving upward or downward. And utricle, it is responsible for horizontal movement. That is when you are going in a car, moving forward or backward. So it is responsible for linear acceleration, vertical movement and horizontal movement. The saccule and utricle, that is otolith organs, they provide a sense of a linear acceleration, that is a response to the changes in the position of the head with respond to the gravity. And the vestibular apparatus, it has been concerned with equilibrium, that is the maintenance of the balance in the body, and also the eye movement, and also the posture and the balance. Then what is the mechanism of hearing? So we are able to listen, isn't it, children? Then how the sound waves are entering, we have to know. The sound waves, these are entering first towards the outer part, that is the external ear pinna. From there, it has been moving or transferring into the external auditory canal. From there, it reaches the third part of the external ear, that is the tympanic membrane, and it has been traveling towards the innermost ear, which generates the impulse to the brain here. That is where the details of the sound is being analyzed. Just see children here, outermost part of the ear, the sound is being moving from the external ear. It has been traveling the auditory meters, touching the tympanum, and from the middle ear, that is the bones, that is malleus incus stapes, it has been still moving towards the innermost part of the ear. From there, it has been moving towards the cranial nerve, that is the 8th cranial nerve, and there the details of the sound, whatever we listen, are being analyzed. So this is the mechanism of hearing, children. Then how the sound is being measured? Yes, the sound is measured in decibels, dB. So here a whisper is about 30 decibels and the normal conversation is about 60 decibels. So when you hear the sounds which are at 30 decibels, that is we are mild hearing loss, and the motor cycle engine running is about 95 decibels. So the normal hearing range, it is nearly between 0 to 20 decibels in all frequencies. Means we are able to listen between 0 to 20, means our ears are functioning properly. So when we hear a noise above 70 decibels over a prolonged period of time, what happens? So it starts to damage our ears, so that is our hearing gets damaged. And when this loud noise, it has been continued above 120 decibels for over a long time, it will cause an immediate harm towards the ears. So hearing of the speech is considered to be impaired where that is hearing level is being shifted, that is from 25 decibels or more. So what is a normal range, children? We have to listen, that is between 0 to 20. But when you see in many functions, keeping the DJ, etc., and having the noise more exceeding, that is 70 decibels, our eardrums will get damaged. Let's see the disorders of the human neural system, which is very important. So the first one is Alzheimer's disease, AD. This is a progressive neurological disorder. So this causes brain to shrink. So this is here also the brain cells will be dying. So this is a common form of dementia seen in the late middle age and also the old age people. It impairs thinking, memory, and also leads to the death. So when you see the people with the Alzheimer's disease, that is AZ, they will be waking up more time and they stay awake longer during the night time. So when you see children, many people that is in the late ages, they what do say that they do not get sleep during the night time. So this disease is called as the Alzheimer's disease. So that is when there is a shrinking of the brain cells. And the next disease, the neurological disorder, is meningitis. You have learned about this term meninges. What is meninges, children? This is the protective tissue layer which is seen in both spinal cord and also the brain. So this is a protective layer. So when there is an inflammation in the meninges layer, so that is when the fluid is been accumulating or surrounding the brain, that condition is called as meningitis. The third disease, the common disease, is Parkinson's disease. This is a brain disorder mostly occurring in the men above 70 years of the age. When you see Muhammad Ali, the boxer, also suffered from the Parkinson's disease. So here the neurotransmitters, that is the dopamine cells, get damaged. So they suffer from muscular rigidity and postural instability, and they lost control over some body functions. This is due to the repeated strokes or repeated head injuries lead to the Parkinson's disease. The next neurological disorder is a stroke, also called as cerebrovascular accident, CVA. So when the blood supply to the brain is disrupted, the brain cells will be dying. It leads to the brain stroke. Then who will be getting affected? So that the people having hypertension, that is high BP, and who take alcohol, and who are obese, who are smokers and having the heart disease, or who are not having proper sleep, that is suffering from sleep apnea, they have a chance of having the brain stroke. That is, the blood supply to the brain is being disrupted. Next one is ischemia. Ischemia is when the artery to the brain is being blocked. So inability of the blood supply to the brain is called as ischemic stroke. Here the people will be suffering from double vision and numbness, means every object they are able to see in two, and numbness, and there is no supply of the blood, and they also suffer from non-fluent aphasia and global aphasia. Non-fluent aphasia means inability to understand. When the people are speaking also, they cannot perceive the thing, means they cannot understand what the other person is saying. And global aphasia means inability to speak, means they cannot speak clearly, that is aphasia. So the ischemic stroke people, they are suffering from double vision and also they cannot understand and they cannot speak clearly. So children, we have learned till now about the generation and conduction of nerve impulse. So under that, we have studied about the structure of the nerve cell, children, that is the cell body and the dendrite and the axon, and what is the axon terminal and what does it contain. And also we have studied about the resting membrane potential, the sodium potassium pump concentration gradient, and how the negative charge shifts to the positive, that is the depolarization. And later we also studied hyperpolarization and the absolute and relative refractory periods. We have also went on to the synaptic transmission. What is the synapse? Types of synapses, that is electrical synapse, chemical synapse, and also what are neurotransmitters, the types of neurotransmitters, and how the impulse is being generated. And we have also went into the sense organs, that is the structure of the eye and the mechanism of the vision. And we have also learned about the structure of the ear and the mechanism of hearing. So here is a homework, children. Distinguish between absolute and refractory periods. How do rods and cones differ from each other? Distinguish between blind spot and yellow spot. What is organ of Corti? Explain the mechanism of nerve impulse through a nerve cell with a neat labeled diagram. I thank Joint Director Rajiv Sir, Additional Director Satyanarayana Sir, my Principal Srinivas, and coordinators who have been striving hard and made this all webinar successful. Vijay Lakshmi Madam, Shailaja Madam, and also I thank Venugopal Sir and also all the supporting team, the webinar team. I thank one and all.
Yes, thank you, Ma. Thank you very much. I just want to convey you all the coordinators, like someone has a pride for something else, but I have a pride that I have very strong team for zoology. I really thank you very much, children. The session was very beautiful. Even though it is a little bit lengthy, it is beautifully explained. So please make a note that you write the notes, draw the diagrams, label it, and practice it for the exam. Okay, thank you very much, students, and thanks a ton, Prashanti madam.
Thank you, madam.
Done.
Thank you,
Sir,
madam.